So Overland Park, of course, is rumored to be in the mix for the Kansas City Royals. 119th in Null, getting the most attention. I thought that it was the worst place I could ever imagine putting a baseball stadium. But, hey, that's just me. I'm not the billionaire owners. But we haven't heard much from local leadership in Overland Park about this. Mayor Kurt Skoog was at a Breakfast Club meeting on Friday morning. And I got this audio from somebody who obviously was at the meeting with the Overland Park mayor. And I thought he spoke more openly and honestly about the possibility of the Royals landing in Overland Park than I've heard him speak to media on this show or anywhere else. And he didn't know exactly where they were in the running when it comes to landing the Royals and whether or not it makes sense for them to go to Overland Park. I've reported over the last couple of weeks that North Kansas City is progressing well when it comes to potentially getting the Major League Baseball franchise. I gave you that 2 weeks ago today. And then last Thursday, you had the mayor of North Kansas City come out in a statement and say, yeah, things are moving along up here. Doesn't mean they'll get it. All right, not going to jump the gun here. I'm not going to do what other radio hosts have done in this town, and that's tell you that they're dotting the T's and crossing the I's and then sit here 6 months later looking like a horse's rear end. I'm not going to do that. But I'll tell you that North Kansas City's in a good spot and that my reporting would suggest Overland Park is number 2 and Washington Square Park is a distant third. But Overland Park's still in the mix. There's no doubt about it. So what is the mayor saying? Well, let's take a listen to Kurt Skoog at this breakfast meeting on Friday. The audio's not great, so we'll stop and go on this thing, and here's part of what he had to say.
So the question is about the Royals. So the Kansas legislature decided that they were willing to fund the majority of its stadium if Royals or Chiefs.
Well, I'm just going to stop right there real quick, and then I'll keep it going. It's not really how it works. The state of Kansas isn't funding anything. No government funds anything without OPM, other people's money. A government doesn't operate without the private sector's money. It can't. I mean, I guess at the federal level, it could just print money, but you get the point. I don't think that's the most genuine way to explain the Star Bond deal that's on the table in Kansas. It would be additive revenues and sales taxes off of those additive revenues that would then be used to pay back the bonds on the stadium that get issued. And depending on how the Star Bond District is built in Kansas and what the actual lines of the Star Bond District are, and we have no idea what that would look like for a Royal Stadium or a new Chief Stadium, you really ultimately might be taking money away that would be going to the taxpayer, would be going to basic services. And it could be how it goes, depending on how these Star Bond districts are ultimately drawn. But anyway, let's continue with Kurt Skoog, the mayor of Overland Park, speaking last Friday morning.
They created the special Star Bond district. So the state is in negotiations, been publicly said they're in negotiations with both teams. One location, we have multiple locations in Overland Park where the Royals could fit and work. We think. Got a lot of work to do, but we think they could fit here. So as soon as the state gets done with a competitive deal, then we'll see if it ends up in Overland Park. But we have a couple sites where the Royals, we think, could work. We have to work on traffic.
We have to work on traffic at the end, says Mayor Kurt Skoog. And we have a couple of locations, he says, in Overland Park where we think it could work. So naturally, there were follow-up questions there from this meeting last Friday morning that the mayor spoke at, including the idea of, okay, if it somehow does pass and if somehow you look at a location in Overland Park and the Royals want to play there and the state approved the Star Bond, well, what about our input here in OP? What would that look like? And here's what the mayor said.
In Overland Park, we have a public, if this would happen, we're taking through our regular process like we do everything. There will be public participation, there will be all kinds of studies, and we will not approve that project unless we think it's a good choice for Overland.
So he basically said there will be public participation, there will be studies, and we'll only approve it if we think it's a good deal for Overland Park. Let me ask you, just honestly, just between you and me. If you think the process were to get that far, where the Royals want to play at 119th and Null, the Kansas legislature or the group within the legislature approves the Star Bond District, do you really think Overland Park would then say, no, we're good? Do you really believe that? Do you really think that whatever you were to go say as part of the public participation involvement at an Overland Park City Council meeting would make a difference? It won't. I promise you it won't. At that point, it will be a done deal. At that point, they will be dotting the I's and crossing the T's. And you can scream all you want at whatever public participation portion of a city council meeting you want, and it won't make a damn a difference. You're kidding yourself if you think that it will. If you're an Overland Park resident and you don't want the Royals for a multitude of reasons, now's your time to speak up. Not in 3 months, not in 4 months, not at the public participation part of the city council meeting. That will be like the teacher in Peanuts. That's what the Overland Park City Council members are going to hear. Wah, 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 wah. That's it. They won't hear a word that you say. They won't care about what you say. You got to get out in front of this. Yesterday, Kate was out with my mother-in-law who was in town, and they were in a part of town where the Royals are considering building. Not exactly right around the street, around the corner, but we were talking about it at dinner yesterday. They were shopping over there. And I said, yeah, that's kind of the part of town where the Royals are considering putting a Major League Baseball stadium. And she was like, what? It doesn't even make sense. I said, yeah, that's the area. And we're talking about this at dinner. And my oldest daughter, who's obviously been the Royals games, she's going to be 7 here coming up in about 6 weeks. She's like, Dad, what's wrong with the current stadium? Like, why is it that 6-year-olds have so much common sense? Why? What is it about 6-year-olds where they have so much common sense? And I didn't give her the old concrete cancer line. I figured I'd pass on that. But I said, yeah, they're considering moving it to over, by the Trader Joe's that you've been to, kind of that part of town, because I figured that was the one landmark that she would know. And I said, yeah, there's a lot of people that live over there that probably wouldn't want this baseball stadium there, but they're not really saying a lot right now. Kind of being quiet. And then she says, well, that doesn't seem like a good deal for them. Why would they want to live near that? Exactly. Once again, why is it that the 6-year-olds have all the common sense around this town right now? I don't know. I can't figure it out either. But if you're an Overland Park resident and this concerns you, now's your time. Don't wait. Speak up. Call your council members. Make a stink. Do those things now. Because by the time we get to let's get the public input from Overland Park residents, it will be too late. I promise you, it will be a done deal at that point. And call your state lawmakers because they're involved here as well in this whole deal. You have people in charge who are running to be the next governor, who are going to play a role in this. That's where you got to make some noise. That's where you have to make your voice heard, or you call up this show. I promise you, you'll have way more people listening to you right now when you call up this show than you will at your city council meeting. And it will make a difference because you'll be ahead of the curve. Do not wait. And I would be curious to know the last time the Overland Park City Council said no to a developer of any size. I mean, they love it. They'll put up whatever complex that the developer wants to put up, and they'll give them, a little cherry on top in the form of some tax abatement to boot as well. When's the last time they said no to somebody? I don't know the answer, but I'm guessing it's been few and far between the last several years. So just remember that as well if you think that there's a chance that Overland Park would actually say no to this if the Royals want to move to OP.
I know how they'll do it. You got to handle this with child psychology. You say, hey, I'm a homeowner. I'm all for the stadium. Can I park cars in my front yard at $20 a pop? Is that okay? Can I put Yeah, HOA will shut that right down. There will be no stadium.
That's a good
You're
one.
not parking in the front yard.
That's so true, man. That's so true. Hey, Pete, can your daughter run for Overland Park mayor? That's on the text line. Might be too late. I think that the deadline is passed. But, there is an Overland Park mayor's race. It's Kurt Skoog's in a good spot to win re-election. I'll say that much. So it's really not about impacting the mayor's race. I don't think there's a lot of juice there. I've said that many times in recent weeks. But I do think that, the leadership right now should be held accountable to the people. And now is an important time to do it.